Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman. We're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow. Lance, thank you for joining us. Eddie Tuvin, live from D.C., Baltimore, Virginia. Where are you live from?
Recently, Philadelphia, where I attended the America East Conference and saw Joseph Coleman there. It was amazing. It was good to see people face to face. Actually had contact with real people.
Panel. Look at that panel there. You and Linda Riley and Greg. I'm not even going to try to pronounce your last name, Greg. But very good. Eddie, good to see you. What are you doing these days? You are the Chief Lending Officer for FSC First. What is FSC First, and what do you guys do?
Certified Development Corporation. We are a nonprofit, and we're in the good graces of Prince George's County, which is a large county, mostly minority in the state of Maryland. And we're out there hunting 504 loan deals and also community advantage deals, as well as 10 other programs for some municipalities, our utility company, Pepco, and also Washington Gas, Purple Line, and things of that nature. It's a big challenge. We're 12 strong, and majority woman and majority people of color.
Good for you. Hey, we have some easy poll questions. When I say easy, there's no right answer. So this is, therefore, you're not going to get anything wrong, but this is for open discussion. We've had a lot of conversation this week about percentage of PPP loan portfolio is fraudulent. What's your guess?
Man, I love Coleman Fraud Friday. I just blows me away that people would do that stuff. I'm going to say over 10%.
What's your guess, Lance?
Bob, it depends on if you're asking dollar amount or number of loans. If we're talking dollar amount,
exactly what the question says. The loan portfolio. You can interpret it any way you want.
It's less than 1%.
I'm hoping you're right, and I would vote that way. Joseph, are you on? You went to a breakout session, and what is the consensus in America East on how much fraud is out there?
Yeah, I'm on, and they were saying it's around 5%, but that's depending on the data that you look at. I am still in the 1 to 2% range, but the consensus is that this is going to be a panel for the next coming years. It's going to be talked about for a while.
Unfortunately, it's here to stay. There's going to be a lot of bad press about it. I'm optimistic. Hopefully the numbers aren't as bad as we're guessing right now. There's been some studies that have come out, and I know there's problems with the underlying data.
One of the things I would say, Bob, dollar amount, I'm going to say 1% or less. Now, number of loans, it could creep up between 3 and 5%.
Okay, but dollar amount, well, that's really what.
Yeah, and the reason I say that, Bob, 2021 PPP, the average loan size is probably $12,000 to $15,000, and there's going to be fraud within the 2021 PPP lending, just by virtue of the fact that it's intended to reach underserved markets. Thus, you've got a lot of less sophisticated business people, so there'll be more instances but fewer dollars. Where 2020 PPP was fewer instances, but Lamborghinis and big houses. So that's the difference in 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, don't forget Rolex watches too.
Oh, I want one. No.
I don't know, Lance. I may take issue with that. Just because you're unsophisticated doesn't mean you're more prone to do fraud. There's some very sophisticated borrowers out there who have done some very sophisticated frauds.
One thing I'll share with you, and I am a social media icon, ha ha ha. No, there were not TikTok videos on how to get a PPP loan in 2020, but in 2021 you could pick up TikTok, you could look on Instagram. There were a variety of places you could look on how to get a PPP loan. And so anytime that type of information's out there, it opens itself up. Yeah. So
brain, yeah, I saw them. Very good. Switching gears on a Friday, How are restaurants doing financially in your footprint overall? How's
So
the restaurant lending niche? How are they performing?
For me, there are two sides of the picture while people are answering this question at home.
Yeah, and as we said, there's no right answer, no wrong answer. Go ahead. Eddie, you're up first.
So thank you. Appreciate that. We have the full service restaurants, and they really suffered. And, great examples. I have a friend, he's got two restaurants. He's got I'll call it a white tablecloth Greek restaurant, and he has a fast food Greek restaurant. The fast food Greek restaurant during the entire pandemic, which was all curbside pickup, and right now there's hardly anybody that ever eats inside, went gangbusters. His full service almost went broke. And now he's having problems getting servers to come back in and literally begging and competing with all these others. Now, one of my friends has a pizza restaurant. During the pandemic, he was 20% month over month compared to the prior year, larger in terms of gross revenue, and he even opened a third location during the pandemic. So it depends on what your model is.
Yeah.
In your footprint, though, overall, how are they doing in Washington, D.C. area footprint?
Overall, I'm going to say good, because people who had been home pent up are now outside in waves hitting these locations.
Lance, Northwest Arkansas.
Well, Arkansas is kind of an outlier, because we went to in-restaurant dining pretty quickly when the pandemic, after 2 or 3 months of the pandemic, with limited capacity, and we went to full capacity. It's been a while. So here, restaurants are operating fairly normally. We're a COVID-19 hotspot right now, probably because it's fairly normal. But it comes down to, Bob, is the food good? Is the service good? Now, just like Eddie said, any business that focused on delivery, carry out, those really excelled over the last year. But dine-in restaurants are back to fairly normal here now. It may shut back, we may go back to limited capacity the way things are going. So,
in my experience, a little bit different. I'm in Orange County, Southern Orange County in California, and a lot of restaurants went out of business. But all of a sudden, you're seeing new concepts popping up in those old locations, which is fascinating to me. And you walk in and they're busy. So it's I would say there are definitely winners and there's definitely losers. And anyway, the
only thing I would say, Bob, is we do not need to back up, because restaurants struggled mightily. They're coming out and doing a little bit better, but if we start restricting dining or make them go back to carry out or outdoor dining only, we may see an implosion in the restaurant.
Who knows? And unfortunately, we're now in another period of uncertainty, and uncertainty is not a nice place to be. This is a fun question. Give me an example of one of your more successful borrowers. Think for a second. Why are they successful? And of course, you notice I didn't give you the easy way out, which is all of the above.
I was looking for that one, Bob.
Lance, I'll let you go first.
I'm going to say that in today's time, the most successful businesses have figured out a way to diversify their supply chain and solve the supply chain issues.
Okay, very good. Eddie?
I'm going to call it great business niche, which was our number one answer here from the poll. And I'm going to say that based on that, the borrowers that I've seen, going back to what Lance was saying a minute ago on the prior question about additional revenue streams, the borrowers that pivoted and brought in these additional revenue streams. The borrowers that had a regular, constant view of what their numbers were, they could print out what their revenues and expenses were on any given day, compare them, see whether or not they were getting in or outside of what their norms were, could control their situation as much as possible. The ones that cut those expenses as quickly as possible before it got too deep, they're survivors, and they're now keeping those additional revenue streams as we go forward. So what we're looking at is post-pandemic stronger survivors that are coming out of it based on, the school of hard knocks.
I agree with both of you, but I would choose access to capital. Because if you don't have capital, all those other four issues don't make, it's not going to work. So that's my answer is, yeah, we have these people, but they need to have capital to execute their plan. But as I said, there's no right answer. Hey, Eddie, I want you to talk about real quick, 504 debt refi. You're on the ground. You have your boots on the ground. What's the attitude among the lenders, among the borrowers? What are you seeing?
So everybody's excited. Obviously, SBA has been working like mad to get these, refined new programs in place. And we know that they had approved certain things back at the end of last year, and you had to start sending in for refi if you didn't have your CDC up to a certain number where, you were limited based on what your prior year's fundings were to a percentage, and so you couldn't do it, and they were waiving all that. All that's gone. I mean, Linda and the team went through this system, and they, systematically said, okay, we're going to do two different things. We're going to go debt refi with expansion and debt refi without expansion, and, we're going to address all the issues that we know are going to come up. Same institution debt, federal debt, whether you paid or didn't pay in the past, for how long did you pay or not pay in the past. They shortened up all these things to make common sense legislation that's going to help rebuild America. It's going to, reduce a lot of people's debt burden. And, obviously with second trusts right now for 504, like 2.88% fixed for 25 years, it's a great way to tell the first trust lenders, hey, you're going to liquidate, you're going to get out of this, and this makes sense. You should do this. Our blended rate is going to be fantastic, and we're at a 25-year, 25-year AMs on a 2.88 deal. Come on, we just reduced that possibility that you're going to get a default. So I think everybody was super excited about it in Philadelphia.
Yeah. Eddie, it took a while for SBA to issue the regulations. How'd they do? Grade them.
Better than SBA does on many things. SBA, I think, has gotten amazing attention and respect. I was talking to Al Meyer at Bloomberg Television at the height of the pandemic, and we were talking about, why don't we do something about small business? I mean, it's an important subject. Nah, our listeners are titans of industry. They don't listen about small business. A couple weeks later, I said, how about that PPP thing? I'll bet your titans of business are begging to find out what this PPP thing is now.
Yeah,
so I think the SBA's recognition and the fact that they moved so quickly on that brought them some respect within the administration and helped them with the other organizations that they have to work through to get this done.
Let's see. I'm going to go to some questions. First of all, did Delaney, are you on with us? Were you able to hook up after your class?
Yes, I'm here. I'm just in my car.
Boy, Delaney is just pops in. Delaney, tell us about Justin Chang, and I think we've talked about him before, but tell me about his employees. Who were some of his employees?
Yes, we briefly talked about him last week, but I didn't get too deep into his employees. He had athletes, stars, artists, and just for a couple examples, there's a Good Morning America anchor, there was an NFL player, and there was a Penn State coach, a former Penn State coach, who actually passed away. He used him as one of the employees.
So he had Joe Paterno on staff.
don't know.
I
Okay,
believe so.
Hunter Van Pelt. We issued that this morning on Fraud Friday. I actually got an email. First of all, do any of you know who Hunter Van Pelt is? The fictional character.
Oh,
He was
no,
the
no.
He was the hunter in Jumanji.
Oh,
Hunter. Yeah, I didn't know that either. So thank you, Sally, for letting us
Was there some relation to the number 6 in the movie? Because this guy did 6 times PPP fraud.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, what did Ms. Van Pelt do? Delaney.
So she applied for many PPP loans, as you just brought up. She applied for 6. She was looking for $7.9 million in PPP loans, and she was able to get $6 million. She just pled guilty, and she now faces 30 years in prison. I think they said in January 2022 there would be a sentencing, so we'll have to see.
Yeah, and this is sort of what I'm beating up on Lance in terms of sophistication. She used not just fraudulent tax returns, but bank statements and payroll reports. By the way, if you want to have a scare, go type on Craigslist and type in financial statements, and you can buy some very nice prepared financial statements there, just so you know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it is much easier to create fake documents than most people think. But what I was talking about in terms of sophistication,
I know, Lance, I know.
in 2020, Bob, most of the borrowers had a bank relationship. Most of the borrowers were legitimate businesses, and there were some instances.
Oh, yeah,
of
99%.
I could tell you a story or two if I were allowed about some of the 2021 borrowers. It's not the same type of borrower that we saw in 2020.
We'll expand on that. I want to get to these questions. We have 4 good questions. Number 1, we have a question from Russell. Does anybody know what percentage of PPP loans from round 1 are still unforgiven, under review by SBA, Lance? You would probably have a handle on that.
The SBA is going to review a cut of SBA loans. And one of the things you'll notice in the direct forgiveness portal, as you increase your volume, you're going to get an increased volume of SBA review requests. It's supposed to generally range between 0.5% and 1% of all the loans done. I think it's probably leaning more toward 0.5% of all the loans done. So it's not a big percentage, but if you did quite a number of loans, it certainly feels like.
Lance, are they completely random, or are they targeting certain NAICS codes?
They're at one point I thought, because got a handful of attorney review requests, but no, they're fully random, Bob. SBA's taking a random cut of PPP loans, and they're reviewing those, and it's a small percentage, but if you have a huge PPP portfolio, it may feel kind of intimidating when you come in the morning and that email box starts going ding, 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 ding.
And that is not your winnings from your overnight.
No.
What is it? When you get on stocks.
But Russell, quick answer. Around 0.5%.
Go ahead, Eddie.
It's not your Robinhood account. That's what you're talking about.
Vicky says, it seems like the letter from SBA that shows a loan has been forgiven would be adequate to provide to the borrower, but SBA requires the lender to provide the note back to the borrower marked paid. Have you heard about this requirement, Lance?
I have not heard about that. I thought the forgiveness letter was fine, and of course in the direct forgiveness portal, the borrower is able to download that forgiveness letter themselves, but I've not heard that we have to provide it.
I've not heard of anything on that. If we're wrong my thing is no, it doesn't have to be done. If I'm wrong, I'm sure, please correct us.
Yeah, I've not heard that either, Bob.
Great question. I apologize. I don't have it, who it's from. but we were talking about working capital adequacy and how do you define, and you had to certify on the 1920 as the lender that this borrower has enough working capital to adequately operate over the next 12 months. Eddie, I'll throw it to you. What do we how do we verify that? What do we do?
So what we do is we take it off of the financials and we look at what their operating expenses are for a year, and we go back and we say they need 3 months. Do you agree with that, Lance?
Yeah, I completely agree, Eddie. That goes all the way, guys, back to my small business development center days back in the middle to late 80s. We used to look at their operating expenses on an annual basis, divided by 12 and multiply it by 3. It's like calculating a PPP loan almost. But
Lance, that is not in the SOP. So
no, it's not. But it's not a standard. Eddie, I don't know where we ever got that. I mean, I've used that for 25, 30 years. 3 months worth of operating expenses is an adequate level of working capital.
Basic, in the old days, real bankers had real training, real financial training. And this is one of the things that we were taught. And this is also the reason why we try and teach all of our borrowers how to calculate debt service coverage ratio, so they understand that we don't want their last penny to be paying their mortgage or their loan payment. They have to be at a minimum of 1.25 times. It's simple. For $1,000 of principal and interest, they have to have $1,250 in cash flow, free cash flow.
Good. And the last question had to do with idle loans. Lance, were you the one who brought that up?
Yes. Someone asked if they could do a couple of things with idle loan proceeds. First of all, I want to emphasize, while idle is a SBA direct program, it's intended to fund operational expenses, payroll, utility bills, things like that. So somebody was asking if you could pay off or basically refinance debt with idle. The answer is you're not supposed to. The second question was could they do a partner buyout with idle loan proceeds, and the partner was the borrower's father. I have problems with that on both levels. It's not the intention of the idle program. And then you have a closely related party. So my answer is, can somebody do it? I suppose, but is it correct? No, not at all. And that's not what I would, if I were a participant banker and somebody were asking me these questions, I'd say, no, you cannot pay off or refinance your existing debt. No, you cannot pay off dad, who's a partial owner of a business. It's intended to pay payroll, utility bills, buy raw materials, but not for those other two purposes.
I just wanted to wrap up on the working capital advance, and by the way, I apologize for being over. So the answer on that is address it. It is up to you how you want to address it. You get to choose the method. Eddie and Lance both say 3 months, but you can choose whatever you want. The key is address it. Don't ignore it. Address it.
Well, and I think Bob makes a beautiful point. There's so many parts of the SOP that don't give you an exact answer, but it does give you the emphasis to address it in your credit memo.
Yeah, 3 things for me. Don't get screened out by not having it, because if you don't have it, you're going to get a screen out for it. So they're going to ask you for that. Separate issue, one of the important things that Linda pointed out at the conference was that the the policy notice 808-830 is the one that totally replaces the language about the refi. So forget about the SOP and use this as you're looking for information about the refi. And on Miss Van Pelt and this guy, Andre Clark down in Florida, and Justin Chang, remember, everybody that's dealing in SBA is dealing with government guaranteed funds for the most part. So if you're messing around with these funds and it's dishonest, it's misappropriation of government funds. You're going to go away for a long time. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
And on that note, we're going to call it. Eddie, thank you so much for your time. Please come back And thank you all for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.
Have a great
Have a
week.
great weekend.